What's up, fans? I'm here with Troy. We're back with a bye-week podcast, but the Buffs are gearing up for Kansas State this week, and it's looking to be quite the matchup. Both coming off a bye week, and they're both 4-1. Kansas State ranked number 18, and this will be the Buffs' first ranked opponent in their season so far. So when I look at Kansas State, I really do see a consistent team. They have the 43rd total offense and the 47th total defense in FBS. They've won against Oklahoma State, ranked opponent, but they did lose against Arizona, who was a ranked opponent at the time that they played them. They are overall a really well-rounded team, and of course, one of the top teams in the Big 12. But from what Colorado showed last week, and what Kansas State is presenting, this does look like an even matchup. However, what Colorado is going to run into, and we're going to get into it, is Kansas State's defensive front. It's much different and I think a lot more formidable than what UCF presented last week. So that's going to be certainly a challenge in running the ball and another challenge for the offensive line. And we'll see if they switch up the starters again. I know Kareem Harden was in at right guard last week due to Khalil Benson being out. And we haven't heard either if Khalil is coming back quite yet. But we did hear that the entire starting defense is healthy and Shiloh Sanders will be excuse me, he will be back for this game. So bye week resolves a lot of things and a lot of new health that the Buffs didn't have prior. I mean, of course, Down Hayden, we talked to him on Tuesday. He's feeling good. And he said he's feeling 100% and his ankle isn't bothering him as much as it did, of course, prior. But we'll see how many yards the run they get on the ground this week because that their defensive front has a few guys that are really, really disruptive in the backfield. But you've been watching Kansas State. You've been watching them a lot more than I have this season. When you look at this team, what do you think is going to be the most challenging element for Colorado to attack this weekend?
Well, surprise, surprise. First of all, this is going to be a great football game. A great football game to cap off a great day of college football. Late kick at Folsom. Something weird always happens. It's always close. So, uh,
Yeah.
it'll be a fun one. This is probably the best team that CU has played. Not probably, actually, they are the best team that CU has played this point to this point. But I think that CU has shown that they're ready for this, right? They've gotten better every single week. Obviously, the performance against UCF was a great one. Um, they still want the Nebraska game back, but that was probably a little bit early for a team that has so many new parts to go into a place like that and play. And this is kind of their next chance to make a statement that they're ready to compete and be at the top of the Big 12 and play with one of the conference's best teams. Probably just off of the eye test, these are probably along with BYU and Iowa State, these are probably those four teams, BYU, Iowa State, Colorado, and Kansas State have probably been the four best teams in the Big 12 just based off of watching. And stop me if you've heard this one before, but it's another really challenging run game for the CU defense to keep up with. You know, they've got three guys that can really run the ball. One of them is the quarterback, Avery Johnson, was very highly touted coming into the year, replacing Will Howard behind center. And he is really an explosive runner. Very different to UCF in the sense KJ Jefferson was a physical runner. They ran in between the tackles a lot. He's a big body. Avery Johnson, they want to get him out on the perimeter. He is so fast. They do a lot of cool like perimeter zone read stuff. He's a really, really good scrambler. He destroyed Oklahoma State on scrambles a couple of weekends ago. Kansas State also coming off a bye, so both teams should be well prepped. And then the running backs, everybody knows Dylan Edwards, the old friend of the Buffs coming back to Boulder. I'm sure he's got revenge on his mind. He's kind of they've kind of made him into a hybrid running back receiver.
Hmm.
I think he's 28% of Dylan Edwards' passing downs. He's actually lined up in the slot, so they put him out there a lot. Try and get in the ball on the perimeter. You know that they do a lot of different things. They do some two back sets with him and DJ Giddens, who is more physical, but still has explosiveness. And their offensive line is good. Look, this is the number 7 ranked rushing offense. I think they run for about 250 yards a game. So um, very diverse. They run all kinds of different stuff, power, counter, a lot of zone stuff, some duo, a lot of read stuff with Avery Johnson. So it's a lot of stuff to look for, and it's going to be really challenging for the Buffs on the ground. And then they tie that into their passing game as well, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Dylan Edwards' stats. 29 carries, 201 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, and then 7 catches, 37 yards, and 1 touchdown. So yeah, I mean they are using him split. And I remember,
He had the big punt return for a touchdown
yes,
against
was
Arizona as
yeah.
well.
Also, I am mistaken. They did beat number 20 Arizona 31-7. BYU they lost 38-9, which was a very surprising game when we all went up to the press box after the Baylor
BYU,
game, and
heck,
we were seeing Baylor. Well, we were seeing BYU just beat the brakes off of Kansas State. Something fun that I was looking at when I was like researching this team is that Chris Kleinman has lost 3 straight games dating back to 2019 after a bye week. So he's not that, he has a losing record coming off of bye
it's that.
weeks. But I mean, you can't take that, to heart, and that won't really be the saving grace for the Buffs. But something to note.
It's a good
And
nugget.
I know it is a little, I did my research before this, surprisingly. But I mean, yeah, as you're, talking about, um, just this is the 16th best rushing defense in FBS. I mean, they're Brendan Mott, who I met at Big 12 Media Days, but I didn't know how good he was until I looked into him. I'm like, oh wow, that guy's actually pretty good. He leads the Big 12 in sacks. He has 4 sacks this season, and then as we were kind of talking before this, you're saying that they kind of line up in three. Then they have a linebacker who really explosive, disrupts things in the backfield, and that guy in this for this matchup is Austin Romaine, and he leads the Wildcats with 19 tackles, and he also has 2 sacks on the season. Really dangerous and interesting playmakers there to look out for in this pass rush. And I mean that as we see just from every week, it's just always up and down. It's like, oh, the offensive line did really good, and they're this, more or less sound. And then you see the Baylor game where Sugar Sanders gets sacked 8 times, and then you see the UCF game, he only gets sacked a handful of times, and it's this back and forth every week, and I think it's always predictable with what the defensive line presents and what we see from the opposition. And what the opposition is showing this week is that they're going to be able to get to Shador. Maybe not as much as they want, hopefully not as much as that, but this is going to be a game where Shador gets hit a lot, and that is what I am predicting. And it's it's just, yeah, like I said, it's just this battle every week of what is the offensive line going to look like, and it's always the defensive line dictating them rather than sometimes the other way around, which we see against more weaker defensive line play. So that's something that I am anticipating, but I am interested to see how they use Dallin Hayden in his second week back, because he got his first week against UCF, pretty productive, had that 14-yard touchdown. I just don't know how well they'll be able to run in between the tackles this week due to them being not as gap sound as they usually are. Hmm?
Yeah, it'll be an interesting battle to watch up front. Different schemes, which I'll get into in a sec, but it's similar to Baylor in terms of the fact that it's a lot of recognition from the offensive line because you don't know where the guys are coming from. Baylor did it a lot with lining a lot of guys up on the line of scrimmage and dropping out defensive linemen and bringing linebackers. Kansas State will line up in a 3-3-5. 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, but they almost never actually send 3 guys. Someone else is always coming. Sometimes 2 more people are coming. Sometimes 3 more people are coming. But you don't know which 1 or 2 of those 3 linebackers are coming. So it's going to be a lot of post-snap recognition, pre-snap recognition from Shador Sanders. And the linemen have got to pick it up post-snap, and they really struggled against Baylor. And they played really well last week against a team that that was pretty much a four down front, and they were coming with four, maybe five, most snaps. And they didn't really have the juice outside of Malachi Lawrence to get after Shador Sanders. You went into the talent that K-State has with Brennan Mott on the defensive line, with Austin Romaine at linebacker. These guys that have had, really nice seasons so far. Um, and we know the scouting report on the CU offensive line, right? That the right side is going to get attacked. The left side is the stronger side at this point. The right side is still being shuffled. We'll see if Khalil Benson is back out there. Maybe it's Kareem Harden and Phillip Houston again. But that's the side that teams are going to go at, right? So that this K-State pass rush is probably going to try and heat Shador up a little bit, but they also, I think it'll be worthwhile for them to see if they can get home with those four-man pressures, just sending one linebacker, because they have been gettable in the pass game, and that's where CU excels, right? I think they're ranked 100th in pass defense, and CU, once again, as they will almost every week, has the talent advantage on the outside. Kansas State's safeties are really good, BJ Payne and Marcus Siegel. But their corners leave a little bit to be desired. Jacob Parrish is a good player, but they don't have the bodies to match up with all of CU's receiving talent. So this isn't news, but if they can keep Shador clean, it should be a good day for the CU offense. It'll just be about the line picking up those bodies coming from all over the place.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely adjustments what Pat Shurmur sees. They're definitely a 10 personnel team. But do you see them switch since they were more successful last week, switching it up with more 11 personnel? They rarely do 12, but a little bit more 11 personnel. Do you think we're going to see that a little bit more this week?
I think it's worth a shot for sure. You would like for Savell Smalls to be more of a threat in the passing game, but the thing about Kansas State is they're hard to run on, because of the way that their linebackers play, very aggressive, obviously in the 3-3, but they don't like to put extra they don't like to get into big personnel. Like they're comfortable playing the 3-3 against one tight end or two tight ends even when teams throw that at them, and keeping the five defensive backs on the field. Um, so I do think you'll see a little bit of Savell Smalls just to see if CU can run the ball that way. I think that Pat Shermer's done a really, really good job mixing up the run game in recent weeks. I wrote about this the other day, but at the first couple games of the season, it was almost exclusively zone runs, and Shermer's mixed it up, mixing in some more gap schemes, mixing in some more counters. Um, Dallin Hayden's touchdown that you mentioned last week was a really nice guard pull play with Savell Smalls coming across the formation as well, and it fooled the UCF safety. I can't remember which safety it was, but he just ran right by the play. Cutback was wide open for Dallin Hayden to score. So I think that they've done really well with that. And look, it's a hard team to run on, but if CU can just stay ahead of the schedule. Look, they don't have to run for 200 yards like Kansas State is going to try to do. That's not their formula, but can you get 85 yards on 20 carries and stay ahead of the sticks? Can you get to 3rd and 3 instead of 3rd and 8, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that make a difference on these drives, and make life easier for Shador Sanders, especially if it does end up being a game where the offensive line is struggling in pass protection. That will make their life so much easier.
Yeah, and this will be a win, maybe on the run if they can surpass and reach another 100-yard game. I mean, last game, it's nice to have a little bit of that momentum coming off their season high rushing yards with 128. But with the 16th best rushing defense being at Kansas State, they've only allowed 91.8 yards per game. So if they get 100 yards, they beat the best defense, rushing defense. So we'll see. Like we said, this is going to be a really, really awesome game. This is a game that I think we've all kind of marked up in our heads, seeing what these teams are both look like. Because Kansas State played in the Pop Tart Bowl, awesome bowl game. Anyways, they're a team that is consistently good. Maybe not living up to the expectations that they have every preseason, but this preseason, of course, Utah was predicted in the preseason media poll to win the Big 12, but Kansas State is right there, one of the top teams in the Big 12. Right now, their offense is averaging 31.4 points per game, and Colorado's averaging 31 points per game. With what this secondary is presenting, I know you mentioned those two guys. Do you think this will be a game where Shedeur can really, capitalize off of what he always does, his multiple weapons, and getting the ball downfield to a handful of guys?
I do, yeah. I think if he's protected, I think that that CU has the advantage on the outside. I think that, it could be a big day for Travis Hunter. It could be a big day for those guys working out of the slot like LaJonte. Jimmy Horn is due again, I think now. We've come back to the point where Jimmy Horn is due for a game, so we could see him pop an explosive play. Kansas State's done a good job not giving up big, big, big plays. Against Tulane, they had a rough day on defense, but since then, in the Big 12, they've played Oklahoma State, they played that game against Arizona, and they really shut down both of them. And I know both of those teams have kind of had their ups and downs offensively based off of what we expected from them. But part of that is Kansas State has shut them down. Um, but that I think is one of the biggest areas that Shedeur has improved this year is that he's okay taking 8 yards instead of, kind of running around and going hunting for big plays as much as he did last year. He still does that this year, which is not a bad thing, because it's extending plays and getting the ball down the field is one of the things that he does best. But last year, I think sometimes you saw it tip too far where he was passing stuff up to hunt big plays, and he's not really doing that anymore, which is going to be a key against this Kansas State defense. Get the ball to your playmakers, let them make plays after the catch, stay ahead of the sticks. So I do think I'm very optimistic about the passing game. I think that Shedeur and them will have a nice day. I'm very curious about the passing game on the other side of the ball, but I'll let you go about Shedeur first.
I mean, I agree. I think we've seen all season, and it's a continuation of when he has a clean pocket, he's probably playing the best football, Heisman caliber football in these games. And it's a continuation of what is this offensive line going to give him? What is he going to be running around like he did against Baylor, just hoping for, prayers and different opportunities to be opened up. And he is really great at making opportunities, but he's even better when those opportunities are just right in front of him with a, a clean pocket. So I just, it's going to be heavy on the pass game again. I think this week, and it usually is, even though the run is opening up a bit. I just don't see that's potentially, and I can be proven wrong, that same production on the ground that we saw this past week with what Kansas State is showing within their front. And it could be proven wrong, but until we see this offensive line really play to their best ability against a defensive line that has shown to be, one of the best in the conference, or just, one of the best in FBS, then we can start really believing in what the offensive line can actually produce, rather than, a defensive line that isn't as good. They play well against these lower talented fronts. They just need to really put up a great performance, a 4-quarter performance against against a defensive front that has actually can really stop, runs and are very talented. When it comes to for this game, I don't know. I just don't. It's going to be a lot more difficult running the ball this time around than it was last week. Still, there are going to be, like you said, just staying in front of the sticks and kind of getting those short yard gains, nothing too flashy, maybe a couple breakout runs here and there, but it's not going to be as, accessible as it was last week. So when I think as well too, with just kind of just pivot to, a different phase of the football team, special teams was significantly better last week than they were
Much better.
against Baylor. It was, as we kind of talked about last week in the pod, just that was the most complete game that Colorado has played all season. And Um, Alejandro made a 47-yard field goal and a 30, I forgot what, 30 something yard field goal. He was consistent. The kickoffs were getting deeper than they were with Cristiano Palazzo, with Alexander Stognjokovic, a freshman walk on. So things are showing up on that end as well, and excited to see just how they respond this week, see if they can maintain that consistency on that front as well, you know?
Yeah, they were really good last week. That's what we were kind of all calling for, with the special teams to be better, and they were absolutely. Mata played well. You know, Jimmy Horn as the punt returner has really given them a good look. He's just a little bit more explosive and decisive back there than LeJontay Wester has been. Obviously, Jimmy Horn had the big punt return before halftime that gave them the field goal. So that was big. I would expect them to keep going with that. But it was you're right. Stojanovic was pretty good. The kick coverage was good too. They had, I think, one touchback, but they didn't really give up any explosive returns, which was nice to see the improvement there. So it was a really well-rounded performance in that area, and that's going to have to keep up. Dylan Edwards is one of the best punt returners in the country. So especially on, Mark Vassett's going to have a good day. Those punt gunners are going to have to be on point. But yeah, the special teams overall is on the upswing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just anticipating, as we all keep talking about, just a really good game. I think, if CU was in a different position, they wouldn't be, this 4.5 underdog. It's a much closer line than they had against UCF because they weren't showing that same caliber of what they can actually do. And they've shown that, this is really a team to be reckoned with and a team that can make it to a Big 12 championship. And this is just one of those pivotal games where if they do come away with a win, they're going to certainly be in contention for that top spot. And of course, they play Utah later as well, but it's just another piece of the puzzle of where they can get to in this postseason, beyond a bowl game, which does seem and is probably a bowl game kind of seems like a lock at this time, the way that the schedule is. I mean, I bet they can beat Cincinnati, and if they come away with a win here, I mean, they're already at 6. So we're hoping for, I'm hoping for a bowl game because last year we weren't able to experience that, and maybe have something a little bit more.
Let's
But
go bowling.
yeah, let's go bowling. Any
Bowling.
last comments you want to make about Kansas State before I pivot to um, some recruiting news?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on one more thing when Kansas State has the ball, just regarding Avery Johnson, who is really explosive as a runner, which we talked about. He's developing a lot as a passer. He's very talented. He's got a big arm. He can make all the throws. It's really about seeing everything. He makes some young player mistakes. Still, C will have chances to create turnovers in the passing game. I'm pretty confident in that. Um, but Kansas State's pass splits are really interesting. They uh almost 44% of Avery Johnson's dropbacks are play action dropbacks. So they build
Mm.
everything off of that running game. It's a really high number. And he's got 6 touchdowns and 1 interception out of play action, and he's only 3-3 in the straight dropback game. So he's clearly more comfortable working off of the run game. So I think if CU can bottle the run up, and which is obviously very difficult against this team, and they can force them into more of those traditional dropbacks, that'll be a big positive for them. And I'm curious if CU blitzes more than they usually do. Obviously they sit in a lot of that cover one. They really like that cover one. I do think they'll feel comfortable with their corners on an island in this matchup against Kansas State's receivers. I think that CU's corners should be able to handle them for a lot of the night. But I'm curious if they spin that confidence into more blitzing. Another Avery Johnson stat that is typical of a young quarterback like him. He has 8 touchdowns and 1 interception when he's kept clean this year, and he's got 1 touchdown and 3 picks when he's under pressure. This Kansas State offensive line is really, really good. It's going to be really hard to get home with 4 a lot, especially with how well Avery Johnson avoids pressure with his legs. So I'm curious if they try and send some more bodies to try and heat him up and make him uncomfortable in the pocket.
Yeah, that's definitely something to watch, especially after the game that Colorado's coming off of with the best pass rushing that they've had all season with maybe 5 sacks and 13 tackles for loss. I agree. They haven't really been seeing that much blitzing this season, and they do sit in that cover one, and they're always sitting in man, and a little bit of that look, especially against this team. Robert Livingston probably identifying the same things that you're talking about now. Maybe they try a little bit more of that, pressure in the backfield, getting a safety down there and attacking Avery Johnson because his inconsistency this season has been something that has you know been something that is one of Kansas State's weaknesses. So we'll see.
He's a very young player. Like, I don't know how to say this, but he's very, very good quarterback. Very good in the running game and the passing game. Super talented. He's going to be an awesome player. But he makes 5 plays a game that make you go, oh, he hasn't really started very many college football games, which is okay. It's true. But CU, that's something that they could take advantage of this week.
Yeah, and highlight of Colorado's defense is their red zone defense. Travis Hunter hasn't allowed a touchdown this season, and after last week, I mean, I know Colorado didn't play, but after the UCF game, they're ranked the 5th best red zone defense with a 61.9 scoring percentage. And they moved down to 7 this week, but their red zone defense is just something that we can really applaud Robert Livingston for. I remember when we were talking to him last week, he said that yards don't equal points. And I'm like, yeah, it's a simple statement, but in those situations when they are so close to the goal line, they still have this mentality that they haven't scored yet, and they still continue to hold off teams that are in really close scenarios and push them away to either a field goal or stops on downs. So very exciting to see, and I really am impressed with what Robert Livingston has assembled through 6 weeks, and there's much more to watch and experience. Especially this is going to be. There's been a lot of different offenses that they've faced this season, but this is the best one that they've faced. So we'll see. I mean, rushing offense, total offense, this is the best one that they faced. Okay, so some recruiting news just that happened the past week. Phil Lodeholt was watching Carday Smith last week. He is still committed to USC, but there is some progress there. And, on the recruiting front, all the coaches and assistants went out during the bye week and scouted some players. And one of them was Carday Smith, who visited Boulder during the Baylor game. So there is some, progress there, some eyes still on him while he is still committed to USC. And he I think he said in an interview that he's still pretty locked in with USC, but in the recruiting world, anything can flip, especially in this new age of NIL. Even Coach Prime said it on Tuesday. It's like we're all shopping for players now, so whoever has the best offer can flip a really talented player to a place like Colorado, which we've been seeing in the Coach Prime era. 5-star Justice Terry. I mean, there's a lot of big teams that are really eyeing him, such as Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Florida State, and Colorado. Those are his top 5, but he should be making an announcement in the early signing period. But those are the teams that are in the mix for a 5-star defensive lineman who's in the Rivals 250. 4-star wide receiver Taz Williams has LSU, Arkansas, and Florida, but Colorado is pursuing him and has interest in the school. And always great to have a 4-star, and we'll see what 5-star. I mean, every year they pick up a 5-star, so we'll see what 5-star they pick up for the 2025 class. I know Keelan has been in the news recently, but we'll see what kind of unfolds there as well. And Zay Gentry, cornerback, he's currently committed to SMU, but Colorado and Wisconsin kind of pose threats on his recruiting and potential commitments. Also, on the basketball side of things, gonna go in through my notes list here. There is a scrimmage at 5 p.m. that is open to the public before the game on Saturday. I will be there briefly. I'll try and catch as much as I can, and I'll put up together a little synopsis of what I'm seeing from this really new look Buffs team that has a lot of new key players that we haven't met before. I talked to Andre Yakhmovsky, really, really cool guy. Like his story, and I think he's going to be a really key component to the Buffs scoring this season, kind of filling in that Tristan Silva role without getting too much into basketball. And we can talk about it more once we see this team more in action, because still there's a lot of unknowns on my end on what this actually looks like, and I'll kind of get more answers when they play each other on Saturday in the scrimmage. So, but basketball. Basketball commitment, in-state prospect Josiah Sanders committed to the Buffs this past week. That makes Colorado's 2025 class consist of 4 different guys with him: Jalen Holland, Ian Inman, and Isaiah Johnson. They're all listed as 3 stars on Rivals within Rivals Network, but Tad is continuing to build and develop, and that's what all you can do in this era. There's a lot of, like I said, unknowns and questions on what this team is going to look like in the best basketball conference in the country. So there's going to be a lot of challenges, but hopefully with those challenges come some really interesting storylines with, Julian Hammond, who in my eyes has always been like a young guy, but now he's like a vet. I'm like, where does the time go? I'm like,
The
where?
vet, the vet.
He's and he's one of like the OG guys too. And now he's like leading the way for all the, guard play that we're going to see. And Javon Ruffin, of course, I can get into it more and more. But I think that is all that we have for this week. It's been a really nice, relaxing bye week. And, comment down below if you want the 49ers to beat the Seahawks, because I definitely will be watching that game and resenting
Vibes around
Troy for a
the
couple
vibes around both
hours.
of our teams. The vibes around both of our teams are so bad right now. Neither
I
of us
know.
are even.
I'm really, really worried because my friend and I, like every year, this is like our jersey swap game. I know the Seahawks play the 49ers and maybe we'll do something then. But every year, my best friend and I go to a bar and we watch this game, and whoever loses has to wear the jersey of the other team. So the 49ers have always beat the Seahawks, at least in recent years. And my friend Coach walks out of the bar in my old Jimmy Garoppolo jersey. So hopefully I won't have to wear his extra, extra large DK Metcalf jersey. I just hope for the best. So that's all for me. Troy?
That's it. Go Hawks.
And Skill Buffs for this big game, and we'll be up late with lots of coverage post game. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye.